Hi guys, so one of the pillars of the Brexit argument was we will be free to negotiate our own trade deals. Well, just how well has this worked out? According to the government's own data, it has been an unmitigated disaster. In real terms, Brexit losses are now more than 178 times bigger than any trade deal gains, and we're still only at the beginning. So, if we look at the gains, and if we can call them that, they currently represent 0.01 to 0.02% of GDP. Not 1 or 2%, not even 0.1 or 0.2%, but 0.1 to 0.2%. It has been calculated at less than 50p per person per year. While the economic hit of leaving the European Union, once again according to UK figures, is a full 4% of GDP. Johnson and his bunch of Brexiteers promoted a new dawn for the UK, an example of global Britain at its best. But the trade deals that have been signed are considered high profile, meaning that the ones in the future are likely to be even worse. The one exception being the US, of course, but the current administration under Joe Biden has recently poured cold water on that. So while the 50p gain is on the one side, the Office for Budget Responsibility point to a loss of over £1,250 per person over the coming years. Experts say the majority of the free trade agreements which the government point to, such as Vietnam, Singapore and South Korea, are just rollover deals that the UK enjoyed as a member of the European Union. While adding nothing really to trade, they can actually harm it slightly because they're not perfect copies. We have recently seen the embarrassing case of the trade deal with the Ukraine, which was a copy and paste and not fully proofread. The government has attempted to defend the figures, saying that they are old and static and from last year. A spokesperson for Dominic Raab's Department of International Trade said, and I quote, "Our Global Trade Outlook, published in September, shows the centre of gravity on global trade is moving away from Europe and towards fast-growing markets in Asia-Pacific." They went on to say, "Our strategy is latching the UK economy to those markets of tomorrow and seizing the huge economic opportunities as an agile, independent trading nation." Notice that they didn't provide any data to contradict what was presented, just rhetoric. Ask any trade expert around the world and they will confirm that a nation trades most with its closest markets. Back to trade deals. Well, the one with Japan, for example, which Boris Johnson and Liz Truss at the time presented as a massive post-Brexit win, is another case of copying and pasting but adding few changes. The benefits from this deal, which are considered minor, are actually cancelled out by the new disadvantages British exporters face when compared to similar companies in the EU. If we look at the New Zealand one being the latest and just before that Australia, these deals do represent an economic benefit. However, both countries represent a small portion of UK trade, so that benefit is minimised. It must be also remembered that these deals have yet to be ratified and are currently agreements in principle only. As I've said before, the main prize for the Brexiteer government was the US, but following the electoral loss of Donald Trump last year, that pretty much sank any hopes of at least a deal in the short term. However, it must be remembered that any deal with the US would likely see the Americans extract major concessions from the British. Worryingly, the NHS would likely be on the table, even though Boris Johnson has rejected this. But then, Boris Johnson is not to be trusted. My question surrounding all of this is whether the Brexiteers in government ever truly believed that trade deals with countries around the world would make up for the loss of trade with the European Union. They certainly wanted voters to believe such a ridiculous thing. Experts at the UK Trade Policy Observatory dismissed the idea that post-Brexit trade deals would make up for the losses of leaving the European Union. A spokesperson for the organisation said, and I quote, "Non-EU partners account for about half of the UK's total trade, so to counter the OBR's 4% loss from Brexit would require agreements with each and every one of them to induce trade changes that create a 4% increment to UK GDP. That is nowhere in sight in the numbers in the table." They went on to say, "The sad answer is that the government is happy to accept on our behalf the economic loss from Brexit in return for the political benefits, sovereignty, and trade agreements with other countries are merely making the best of a bad job from an economic perspective." Brexit was based on faith, the idea that if we believe enough in something, it will come through. This is why I'm concerned with Keir Starmer's recent position of making Brexit work. Brexit does not work. The public need to understand that. They need to see that it has been a failure. Some need to go through the economic pain in order for them to understand that they've been lied to by the likes of Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage and Michael Gove. Only then will people reject such lies in the future. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.